Your relationships suck because your boundaries suck. And we have good news and bad news, Batty. Which one do you want first? You probably want the bad news first. The bad news is that it's all your fault. But the good news is that it's all your fault, which means that it's in your control and we can do something about it. What's up, baddies? I am Rima, and this is the Arab and Thriving Show. Today, we're going to talk all about boundaries. We're going to dive right into it. Stop expecting people to read your mind. Stop expecting them to just know what you're thinking. So when it comes to boundaries, have you actually stated your boundaries? Have you actually told people in your life what your boundaries are? Have you sat with yourself and asked yourself what your boundaries even are? Or are you just waiting until you get triggered to realize that someone crossed your boundaries? Newsflash, if you don't even know that you have a boundary, how in the world do you expect a whole nother human with their own set of boundaries and their own ways of thinking to know that you have a boundary? So first and foremost, when it comes to especially family and especially my Arab baddies out there, you can't expect people to just automatically know what is a boundary for you. You might be listening and feeling like that's really scary. Like, how am I about to tell my Arab ass mom that I have a boundary? I think we hear the word boundaries a lot of times and think that it's like so Americanized. Stop acting like only other types of people have access to these toolkits. You can still have boundaries. You still have access to boundaries. This is something that you deserve and will actually help your relationships. The basic definition for boundaries for the purposes of this video is knowing where you stop and someone else begins, or knowing where someone else ends and where you begin. And for brown people, for Arabs, for Muslims, it can be a lot more difficult to understand that because we really grew up in such a collectivist, community-oriented culture. And while that's so beautiful, it really can hurt us in moments where we need to have a hard boundary or help people understand how to love us and how to show up in our relationships. What really stands in the way of us having these healthy, happy relationships is realizing that setting boundaries is not mean. It's not rude. It's not aib. It's not this thing that you're doing because you're just very disrespectful. It's literally the opposite. It's you carving out space for yourself to show up and take care of yourself so that you could be the best person, not just for yourself, but the best sister, the best mom, the best cousin, the best friend, the best partner. You're enabling that. You're enabling your other relationships by setting those boundaries. I read something the other day that people who are the most compassionate people are also the people who have the most strict boundaries. And I just want to leave you with that thought. If you are someone who is struggling with boundary setting because you feel like it's just not really within your culture, understand that you are preventing yourself from being as compassionate and loving as you possibly can be because your boundaries are getting trampled on and you aren't feeling like you have that capacity. I just want to give you a quick homework assignment. If you are somebody who is expecting people in your life to read your mind, today, I don't care. Like if it's 2 a.m. and you're watching this, fine, you can do it tomorrow. But today, if it is a normal time, I want you to set a soft boundary with anyone in your life. I want you to think of a situation where you could be using better boundaries and just start to brainstorm how you might communicate that. You don't want to be like randomly iMessaging someone like, hey, just want you to know that this is a boundary for me. Like if it doesn't come up, don't force it, but just put it in your notes section. They're not going to know in that moment that you sat with your notes section and watched this YouTube video and outlined how you're going to write your boundary. It's fine. It's going to come across naturally because you've given yourself that time to think through the most effective way to communicate it. Give you a few different options on how you might communicate that. One big boundary I set is when I feel like talking about something. There are a lot of times, contrary to popular belief, I know it seems like I talk all the time where I don't feel like talking about something. And specifically when I feel like the conversation is not about to be productive. I do this with Ahmed all the time. Like if we're getting into an argument or if we're just kind of not hearing each other, I will literally say, I think we need to just pick this up later and talk about it later. And that's me setting a boundary. Like I'm committed to having a productive conversation with you that is based on love and respect. And if I feel like I can't give that, I'm setting a boundary and just letting him know this is something that I'd love to talk about at a later time. Very quick and easy boundary for you to set. I know it might not seem easy to do that with someone like a parent, but I think you can just lead with love and say, Mama or Baba, I'm really feeling upset right now. Can I just think about this for a little longer? Or I'd love to think about this for a little longer and talk about it soon with you. Whether your native language is English, Arabic, or something else, there are ways to communicate what you need without coming across too white or like too Americanized, because I feel that. Another way to set a soft boundary that might be very comfortable for most of us, especially us Arabs, is to use humor. This is something I have been employing so much. I don't know about you, but us Arabs, we love our group chats. We have a family chat. We have like a family chat with like the larger family. We have a cousins chat. We have like, there's just so many family chats. And you know, family chats can be kind of triggering sometimes. You might get tagged in something or put on the spot in a conversation that doesn't always feel very comfortable. Sometimes you might be put on the defensive. And so old me would react. I'd be like, and I'd realize that not only does that not create a productive conversation with people who I really love, it also makes me feel terrible for the rest of the day. It makes me feel heavy. Instead of just going into detail about how I feel or how I think or I really disagree, I just employ humor to basically get across that I don't really want to talk about this or I don't really care to talk about this. We can agree to disagree without creating that negative energy that ends up affecting you more than anyone else. If you celebrate any of the holidays that are coming up, you're probably going to be around family a lot. A very typical thing that a lot of us like to set boundaries around is our weight, our eating habits, whether we are seeing someone romantically or not. There's just a lot of personal things that do get brought up during the holidays. So this is a perfect chance for you to, instead of reacting, instead of getting upset, which is completely valid, but it just ends up hurting you more than anyone, crack a funny joke. And I've just seen so many people, especially within our community, do this masterfully. I don't even know if they realize that they're setting a boundary, but someone will be like, how do you have time to meet someone? You're just so busy with school all the time. Find something clever and funny to say where you still keep that light, loving interaction with your family, because at the end of the day, most of us do want that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be watching this, while also setting the boundary that you don't want to talk about it. Usually that works on the first time. You just crack a joke, everyone starts laughing, they get distracted. And I'd actually love to hear in the comments below, like any joke ideas. I'm struggling to think of things right now. I'm usually good on the spot, but any joke responses, funny, humorous responses that you would say if somebody asked you a question that you felt crossed the boundary or was intrusive. You also probably have really bad boundaries because you're reading other people's minds. You might be assuming what other people need and therefore creating this world where your needs and their needs are blurred and you are overly responsible for how they feel, especially for people who come from communities like mine. We constantly feel responsible for our families in a way that could make it very difficult for us to maintain boundaries. I'll tell you a story that happened not too long ago with my family. We were all in Lebanon. We were all out to eat. And I just found myself so preoccupied with where my mom was sitting on the table. And don't ask why, I just constantly was like, are you sure you want to sit there? Are you sure? And it became very, very uncomfortable because she didn't say anything about being bothered about where she was sitting, but I just thought I was reading her mind and thought I sensed some discomfort around the seating arrangement. So I took it upon myself to just solve that problem. And what ended up happening was just me drawing attention to something that probably didn't even need attention drawn to. It kind of became a thing. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like on the table, she got frustrated with me. I'm sitting there feeling bad for myself because I'm like, well, I'm just trying to make sure you're comfortable. She's like, I'm comfortable, leave me alone. And I was like, okay, well, my bad. Like I was just really trying to make sure you were good. And then I thought about it and I'm like, man, like how annoying must it be to feel like someone is reading your mind when you don't want to express something, whether she was comfortable or uncomfortable. Clearly she wasn't uncomfortable enough to want to do something about it. So to have someone in your face trying so hard to make you feel better or to accommodate you, it could feel very suffocating. A lot of us do this. We blur boundaries because we make someone else's problem or the perception that they have a problem our problem. This is a huge thing that I think we need to get together. Like if your boundaries suck in your relationships, it's because you might be assuming responsibility for someone else's stuff and not realizing that, like, cool, can I support if they're asking me for support? Yeah, but even then I understand the extent of my support to them. This is not my responsibility to carry. This is their responsibility. If they enlist me, then I can offer this much help, but this is not my problem to solve. I know that is very hard for a lot of us to hear, because again, we grew up in a culture where we do feel very responsible for our families. And I just want to caution you and remind you, at what point are you actually not being helpful? At what point is your intention to help actually enabling bad behavior? Or at what point is your intention to help actually coming across very overbearing and assuming? I really want to talk right now to my empaths. Sit down, let's talk, because I don't think you should identify as an empath anymore. I'm just going to break it to you. I watched this video in 2019. It was this creator who I really respect. Her name is Mariam Hasna, talking about why she went to empath rehab. That's what she called it, because she realized that being an empath, AKA being someone who feels other people's feelings, is extremely counterproductive. If you are someone who sees someone cry and then just starts crying, just ask yourself what your tears are going to do for their tears. I don't know about you, but when I'm crying, I don't want you to cry. Okay. I want you to sit and listen. I want you maybe to hug me if we have that type of relationship. I want you to talk me through it, but I don't want you to cry. Girl, let me have my moment. Like, I'm trying to be sad. I don't need you to be sad with me. And when you really break it down, and if you're really honest with yourself, you're being an empath because it makes you feel good about yourself. It makes you feel like you're a good person. It makes you feel like you are so empathetic, or you're so superhuman that you could feel magically what other people feel. And I'm not calling you out in a judgmental way. I'm just being real with you, because this is exactly how I used to identify. I used to be like, I'm just empathetic on a whole new plane, and I feel what other people feel. And I see this person on the street who I don't even know, and I just feel what they're feeling. And it's like, cool. But what does that actually do for them? When you get boundaries, you realize that you can actually be more helpful on this side of the street. Like, you don't need to walk over there and like lay on the floor and die with someone else as they're suffering. Like, that's not helpful. No, you need to stand on your side, maintain your strength, maintain your composure, and call for help. Or if you have the skills to help them yourself. But you absorbing someone else's emotions just creates more of that vibe, and you don't want more of that vibe. You need a boundary in check so that you can actually be supportive, if that's what you're even meant to do. The line that actually really helped me was, I am having my own experience. So when I am in conversations with my family, where it is very challenging to just not absorb that person's emotions because of how much I care about them, I give myself permission and I say, okay, my little sister is crying and talking to me. I want to be very sad because that's my sister, but that's not what she needs. She doesn't need me to be sad. She needs me to be strong. Not that being sad means you're not strong, but you get what I'm saying. She needs me to be composed. She needs me to think about this or talk her through it in a different way. So I will literally ground myself by saying, I'm having my own experience, so that there is this separation between what she's feeling and what I'm experiencing. If you're someone who reads people's minds and tries to get into people's heads, whether it's a partner or a family member, you need to give yourself permission to not assume responsibility for anyone else's stuff. Ahmed! I have this core memory from when I was a baby. I might have been like 2 or 3 years old. I had this like race car bed that I used to sleep in, and I just thought I was so cool. But the race car bed obviously had a mattress, but it was covered in plastic because it was a race car. And in the middle of the night, one night, I turned really fast, and I think I hit my mouth on the plastic part really hard. So I started bleeding and crying. And my dad sprints upstairs to get me, pulls me out of bed, and in typical Arab dad fashion, as I'm crying and like holding my lip in pain, he starts cussing at the world in Arabic. Or you know how like Arab parents will be like, "Yil'an immek, yil'an bayik," you know, they're like cussing themselves out. For anyone who's not an Arabic speaker, Arab parents will cuss themselves out as a way to express their frustration. It's not frustration towards you. And you know that even at a young age, it's frustration towards the situation. So the reason I'm telling you this is I never forgot that story where I thought it was so cute. Like, I'm this baby crying and in pain, and my dad is so hurt seeing his baby in pain that he grabs me and is cussing the world out and is like wiping off the blood from my mouth in the sink. And it just was a moment, right? And I used to think it was a cute story. I still think it's a really cute story. But what I didn't realize was it taught me a very toxic lesson. it taught me this lesson that I'm trying so hard to unlearn even today, that what I do intentionally or unintentionally could cause pain to someone in my life. That is how I kind of rewrote that memory in my head. Is like, I did something on accident. I hit my mouth in the middle of the night, which disrupted my dad and caused him pain and caused him frustration and caused him fear. Like, I saw all of those emotions. I knew that he wasn't upset with me, but I realized that I could do something that could cause someone else pain. And one thing I want you to know, if you've also internalized these messages, especially if you're Arab, you likely have, because again, we have families that are so close to a point where it's almost hard to take a step without that impacting someone else in our lives, right? In our families. Understand this: how people choose to react to what you do or don't do is their choice. You did not cause that reaction. You did not cause that reaction. They chose to react that way. Separate what you do or don't do from how they do or don't decide to react. And I'm saying this not because this moment of my dad, washing my blood out of my mouth as a toddler affected me and hurt me. No, it's just that it conditioned me to feel guilty anytime I caused my parents or someone that I love any type of disappointment or pain or burden or inconvenience. And you can probably think of a few examples where our parents aren't always right. Do they want what's best for us? For the most part, I mean, I know my parents always wanted what's best for me. Are we going to sometimes disagree on what that looks like? Yeah. And as we get older and we need to come into our own values and identities, it is important to remind yourself, am I intentionally hurting them? No. Just because they're yelling or angry or giving me the silent treatment or reacting however they decide to react does not mean you caused that reaction. I don't care how quote unquote shameful whatever you think you did was. I don't care how, I'm getting emotional talking to you right now, but like, I don't care how guilty you feel about what you did. I don't care how upset people in your life might be with you. How they choose to react is how they choose to react. Just putting that out there, because again, when we don't have clear-cut boundaries, the story starts to be, well, I didn't go to med school and therefore my parents are depressed. Girl, no. Like, that's not how it works. You chose not to go to med school. They chose to be upset about that. They chose not to accept that decision. And of course, there are moments where we can have both, where we can do what's best for us and still keep our parents or our loved ones or our families on good terms with us. And I actually think setting better boundaries with our families in the form of communicating our needs, communicating our expectations, not assuming responsibility where we shouldn't, not reading people's minds, I think that solves half the problem. It also teaches people how to show up in your life or what they need to respect or get on board with in order to be part of your life. And I know that that sounds harsh, but you can watch my cut them off video if you need more context on that. Setting boundaries might be challenging for you, but you can do it. And it takes one. Half the time our anxiety is built up so much because we've never really practiced something. But the second we go and try it and we realize, oh, they listen to me. It's kind of like that moment of like, oh my God, that went well. Or even if it doesn't go well, again, what you do doesn't cause their reaction. They chose to lash out. You set a boundary, they chose to lash out. Cool. Imagine how they would be treating you without a boundary. You just need to be very confident that what you're doing is coming from a place of love. There is a wrong way to set boundaries. Some people feel like so resentful or so out of control that they start setting these harsh boundaries. They start being really rude. They start being mean. And that is not what I'm condoning. Boundaries are not mean. Boundaries are very nice to everyone and to yourself. Like, they're just very clear. Don't mistake in being clear and concise and confident with being mean. But also, there is such thing as being mean. And I'm not condoning being mean or punking your parents out or punking your family or even partner out. I don't condone threatening people. I don't think you need to give people an ultimatum. I just don't think that's an effective way to set boundaries. You don't need to be like, you either get with it or get lost. If you're a powerful person and you're setting a clear boundary, that should just be very assumed. I literally had a friend tell me one time, literally, if you continue to do that, I don't know if we can continue to be friends. And that was a beautiful way of saying, get with it or get lost. And honestly, I respected her so much after that. And I got right in line. And what she was pointing out was something that obviously I didn't intentionally hurt her. I could totally understand how I did hurt her. And I respected her so much because I felt like she was choosing a healthy relationship over resenting me or over cutting me off or over being passive and expecting me to understand. Give people in your life a chance to prove you wrong. Give them a chance to show you that they can respect you. Give people in your life a chance to show you that they can grow and they can change. Do not freeze people in time. Don't make these assumptions. Don't let your anxiety make you assume all of these things about the people in your life. Yes, even your family. We're all growing and learning. Just try it out. And I'm really excited to hear about how it goes when you do try it out. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below letting me know, how do you plan to incorporate boundaries? Let's workshop some of them. Comment something below that you think is a boundary you want to set, and let me know if you want any feedback on how to phrase that or how to kind of work through that. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much. You're about to kill it. You're about to be a boundaried baddie, and I'm just so excited for you. Talk to you on the next one, baddie.